The great iron doors of Thornhaven Castle groaned open, and Seren slipped through the narrow gap like a shadow returning to its corner. Midnight had come and gone. The corridor torches had burned down to embers, casting the stone walls in shades of amber and ash. She had almost made it to the servants' passage when his voice stopped her cold. "You call this an hour to come home?" Serene's pulse stuttered in her chest. She turned slowly, already knowing what she would find. Alpha King Kalen stood at the top of the grand staircase, still dressed in his formal attire from the evening's council. His dark hair was disheveled, as if he had been running his fingers through it for hours, and his eyes, those pale silver eyes that had haunted her dreams since the day she arrived at this castle, were blazing with barely contained fury. "Your Majesty," she dipped into a curtsy, keeping her gaze fixed on the floor. "I apologize for the late hour. I did not ask for an apology." His boots struck the stone steps like thunder as he descended. "I asked where you have been." Seren's fingers tightened around the basket she carried, hidden beneath her cloak. Inside lay bloodied bandages and the remnants of healing herbs she could not afford to let anyone see. "The village, Your Majesty. One of the baker's children took ill, and his wife asked if I might sit with him while she—" "The baker's wife." Kalen's voice was silk wrapped around a blade. He reached the bottom of the stairs and continued toward her, each step deliberate, predatory. "And it took you until this hour to comfort a sick child?" "He was very frightened, Your Majesty." "So frightened that you could not send word? Could not ask one of the guards to inform me of your whereabouts?" He stopped mere inches from her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell the pine and wood smoke that always clung to his skin. "Do you have any idea what I—" He stopped himself. A muscle twitched in his jaw. Seren dared to lift her eyes. What she saw there made her stomach tighten. Behind the anger, behind the cold authority of the Alpha King, there was something else. Something that looked terrifyingly like fear. "Your Majesty." She kept her voice soft, careful. "I am merely a maid. Surely my comings and goings are not worthy of your concern." The words were meant to remind him of propriety, of the vast gulf between their stations. Instead, they seemed to ignite something dangerous in his gaze. "Not worthy of my concern?" He laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "You think I pace these halls until dawn for servants who are worthy of my concern?" Seren's pulse quickened. "I do not understand." "No." His voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. "Neither do I." For a long moment they simply stood there, the air between them charged with something neither could name. Then Kalen's nostrils flared and his expression shifted. "What is that scent?" Ice spread through Seren's veins. "Your Majesty?" He leaned closer, inhaling deeply, and she watched his silver eyes flicker with something molten. Gold. For just an instant his eyes flashed gold before returning to their usual pale hue. "You smell of blood." His hand shot out, catching her wrist before she could retreat. "And something else. Something I cannot place." "The child," Seren said quickly, too quickly. "He had a fever. There was some bleeding from his nose, and I helped clean." "Do not lie to me." The command rolled through her with supernatural force, pressing against her will like a physical weight. An alpha command. He was using his alpha voice on a mere servant, and the violation of protocol told her exactly how far past reason he had gone. "I am not lying, Your Majesty." She forced the words out through gritted teeth, fighting the compulsion with everything she had. "I would never—" His grip tightened on her wrist, and suddenly he pulled her closer still, until they were chest to chest, until she could feel the wild hammering of his heart through the fine fabric of his shirt. "Your pulse says otherwise." His breath was hot against her temple. "It races like a rabbit before the wolf." Seren closed her eyes, willing her body to calm, willing her secrets to stay buried. But when she opened them again, Kaelin was staring at her with an expression that made her knees weaken. "What are you?" he breathed. Before she could answer, before she could craft another careful lie, footsteps echoed from the upper corridor. They sprang apart just as Lady Cordelia descended the staircase in a dressing gown of crimson silk, her golden hair artfully tumbled around her shoulders. "Kaelin, darling." She did not spare Seren a glance. "I woke to find you gone from the celebration. Is everything quite all right?" Seren watched the Alpha King's face transform. The raw emotion vanished behind a mask of cold indifference, and when he turned to address the noble lady, his voice held none of the fire that had burned through it moments before. "Everything is fine, Cordelia. Return to bed." But as Seren slipped away toward the servants' quarters, she felt his gaze boring into her back. And she knew, with the certainty of prey sensing a predator's attention, that the Alpha King of Valdrin was not finished with her. Not by far. Sleep did not come that night. Seren lay in her narrow cot, staring at the ceiling of the room she shared with her younger sister, replaying every moment of the encounter until the words were worn smooth in her mind. "What are you?" The question haunted her. No one had ever looked at her the way Kaelin had, as if he could see straight through her skin to the secrets burning underneath. "You came home late again." Seren turned her head to find Neve watching her from the opposite bed, gray eyes luminous in the pre-dawn darkness. At 13, her sister was already showing signs of the beauty that would one day rival their mother's, the mother. Neither of them could clearly remember. "I was helping in the village." "You were using it again." Neve's voice held no accusation, only worry. "Seren, you promised." "A man was dying, Neve. He had been attacked on the road, left for dead in a ditch." Seren sat up, pushing her dark hair back from her face. "What was I supposed to do? Walk past and let him bleed out in the mud?" "You were supposed to stay hidden." Neve crossed the small space between their beds and took her sister's hands. "You know what happens to women like us, the burnings in Eastmere, the drownings in the river provinces, and you take risks as if none of it matters." Seren squeezed her sister's fingers. "I am careful." "You are reckless." Neva's voice cracked. "And now the Alpha King himself is watching you. Everyone saw him waiting in the Great Hall tonight. Everyone heard him asking where you were." The words sent a chill down Seren's spine. "Everyone?" Lady Cordelia was furious. She told anyone who would listen that His Majesty must be losing his mind, obsessing over a common servant. Neve's grip tightened. "Seren, what happened between you two?" "Nothing," Seren wanted to say. But the lie would not form on her tongue. Something had happened, something she did not understand. From the first moment she had arrived at Thornhaven Castle 6 months ago, the Alpha King had watched her. Not with the casual dismissal most nobles showed their servants, but with an intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness. At first, she had told herself she was imagining it. Kaelin Varinus was the most powerful Alpha in the 5 Kingdoms, ruler of Valdrin and commander of the legendary Silvercrest Pack. He had his pick of noble ladies from every great house. Why would he spare a second glance for an orphaned maid with calloused hands and mended dresses? But the glances had continued, and lately, they had become something more. "He asked me what I was," Seren whispered. Neve's face went pale. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing." Lady Cordelia interrupted before I could answer. Seren released her sister's hands and stood, moving to the small window that overlooked the castle's inner courtyard. Dawn was breaking over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. "But he knows something is different about me, Neve. He could smell it on me." "Then we have to leave." Neve's voice was urgent. "Tonight. We can slip out through the kitchen passage and be miles away before anyone notices." "And go where?" Seren turned back to face her sister. "We have no family, no coin, no references. At least here we have food and shelter and—" A sharp knock at the door cut off her words. Both sisters froze. Servants did not receive visitors, especially not at dawn. Seren moved to the door and opened it a crack. A young page stood in the corridor, his face flushed with the importance of his errand. Mistress Seren, His Majesty requests your presence in his private study, immediately. Her stomach dropped. Did he say why? He did not. The page shifted nervously. But he was very clear that you should not delay. Seren exchanged a look with Neve, seeing her own fear reflected in her sister's eyes. Then she straightened her spine, smoothed her rumpled dress, and stepped into the corridor. Whatever the Alpha King wanted with her, running would only make things worse. She would face him, answer his questions with careful half-truths, and pray that her secrets remained her own. But as she followed the page through the winding castle corridors, she could not shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The Alpha King's private study was a room Serene had cleaned 100 times but never truly seen. Now, standing before his massive oak desk while Kaelin himself stood silhouetted against the window, she noticed details that had escaped her during her daily duties. The ancient maps covering the walls, their edges brown with age. The weapons mounted above the fireplace, each one bearing the marks of actual combat. The books stacked on every surface, their spines cracked from frequent use. This was not the room of a decorative monarch. This was the den of a warrior king. Close the door. Seren obeyed, her pulse thundering in her ears. Kaelin did not turn from the window. In the morning light she could see the tension in his shoulders, the rigid set of his jaw. He looked like a man who had not slept any better than she had. I owe you an apology. Of all the things Seren had expected him to say, that was not among them. Your Majesty? Last night. He finally turned, and she was struck again by the severe beauty of his face, all sharp angles and shadows. I behaved abominably. I used my alpha voice on you without cause. I demanded explanations you had no obligation to provide. His silver eyes met hers. I frightened you. I was not frightened, Your Majesty. Another lie. But there was no anger in his voice this time, only exhaustion, and something that sounded almost like despair. Do you know how I can tell when you are lying, Seren? She shook her head, not trusting her voice. Your scent changes. He moved toward her slowly, giving her every opportunity to retreat. She did not take it. Most humans cannot control the subtle shifts in their bodies, the way fear smells different from anger, the way truth smells different from deception. But you... He stopped an arm's length away. You are remarkably skilled at keeping your scent neutral, almost as if you have had practice hiding from wolves. Seren's mouth went dry. I do not know what you mean. There. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. That was almost convincing. Your heart barely stuttered at all. The smile faded. Who are you, Seren? And do not tell me you are merely a maid. We both know that is not the full truth. She could feel herself standing at the edge of a precipice. One wrong word, one misstep, and she would plunge into the abyss. I am no one of consequence, Your Majesty, an orphan from the eastern provinces. My parents died when I was young, and I have been working in great houses ever since. And your sister? Neve is all the family I have left. Kaelin studied her for a long moment. The eastern provinces, he repeated slowly. That would be near Eastmere, would it not? Where they burned 3 women last spring for the crime of witchcraft. The blood drained from Seren's face. I thought so. His voice was soft, almost gentle. I am not your enemy, Seren. Whatever you are hiding, whatever gifts you possess, I have no intention of exposing you to those who would do you harm. Then why am I here? Because I need to understand what is happening to me. For the first time, she heard genuine confusion in the Alpha King's voice. My wolf has been restless since you arrived. He paces beneath my skin constantly, clawing for release whenever you are near. Last night, when you did not return." He stopped, jaw tightening. "I nearly tore this castle apart searching for you." Seren stared at him. "I do not understand." "Neither do I." He laughed bitterly. "I am the Alpha King. I have controlled my wolf since I was 16 years old. No one, nothing has ever threatened that control." His eyes found hers, and she saw the wolf looking back at her, gold bleeding into silver. "Until you." A knock at the door shattered the moment. "Enter," Kalen called, his voice hardening back into command. The door opened to reveal his beta, a scarred warrior named Fenris, his face grave. "Forgive the interruption, my king, but we have a situation that requires your immediate attention." "What is it?" Fenris's gaze flickered to Seren, then back to his alpha. "Hunters, your majesty. A band of them crossed our border an hour ago. They carry weapons marked with the seal of the Wolf's Bane Order." Seren watched the color drain from Kalen's face. "How many?" 24, perhaps more. They travel with a covered wagon." Fenris paused. "My king, we captured one of their scouts. He claims they carry something new, a poison specifically designed to kill our kind." The Alpha King was already moving toward the door. He paused at the threshold, turning back to Seren with an expression she could not read. "We will continue this conversation later." It was not a request. "Until then, you will remain in the castle. Is that understood?" Seren nodded, her mind still reeling from everything he had revealed. But as she watched him disappear down the corridor, she felt a chill settle deep in her bones that had nothing to do with the draft from the open door. The Wolf's Bane Order. She had heard stories about them during her childhood in the East. Fanatics who believed all supernatural creatures were abominations that needed to be purged from the earth. They had killed her mother. They had nearly killed her. And now they were here, in Valdrin, carrying weapons designed to destroy the very wolves who had given her sanctuary. Seren looked down, at her hands, remembering the warmth that had flowed through them last night as she healed the dying traveler on the road. She had sworn to keep her gifts hidden. But if the Wolf's Bane Order succeeded in their mission, if their poison found its way to Kalen, no, she could not let that happen. Even if saving him meant revealing everything she had fought so hard to hide. The castle transformed within hours. Where there had been servants bustling about their daily routines, now there were warriors sharpening weapons and checking armor. Where there had been the pleasant hum of a household at peace, now there was the tense silence of a pack preparing for war. Seren moved through it all like a ghost, invisible amid the controlled chaos. She had been ordered to remain in the castle, but no one had said she could not work. And work kept her mind from spiraling into panic. The Wolf's Bane Order. Here, after all these years. She was carrying fresh linens to the guest chambers when she heard the commotion from the main hall. Raised voices, the clatter of boots, and beneath it all, a sound that made her blood curdle. A man screaming in agony. Seren dropped the linens and ran. The great hall was crowded with warriors when she arrived, all of them forming a loose circle around something she could not see. She pushed through the press of bodies, ignoring the surprised looks from those who recognized her as a mere servant, until she reached the inner ring. The air left her lungs. Kalen lay on the stone floor, his body convulsing violently. His skin had gone gray, and dark veins were spreading across his chest and arms, visible even through his torn shirt. Black foam flecked his lips as he fought to breathe. "What happened?" someone demanded. "The scout," Fenris answered, his voice ragged. He had a blade hidden in his boot, coated with something. The moment it broke the king's skin, another convulsion racked Kalen's body, and this time his scream was barely human. The sound tore through Seren like a physical blow, and she felt her own power surge in response, desperate to answer his pain. "Move aside." An elderly man pushed through the crowd, a healer's bag in his hands. "Let me see him." The court physician knelt beside the fallen king and began his examination, but Seren could see the despair growing on his face with each passing moment. This was no ordinary poison. This was something designed specifically to kill wolves, something no human medicine could counter. "I cannot stop it," the physician finally admitted, his voice breaking. "The poison is spreading too fast. It has already reached his heart. At this rate, he will be dead within the hour." A moan of anguish rose from the gathered wolves. Fenris dropped to his knees beside his alpha, his scarred face twisted with grief. Serene's hands were shaking. She pressed them against her thighs to hide the trembling, but she could feel the warmth building in her palms, her gift screaming to be released. If she did nothing, Kaelin would die. If she saved him, everyone would know what she was. The choice should have been simple. Self-preservation, the instinct that had kept her alive all these years, demanded she remain hidden. Let the wolves mourn their king, take Neve and flee before anyone connected her to the chaos. But then Kaelin's eyes fluttered open, and through the haze of agony, they found hers. Gold and silver swirled together, man and wolf united in their final moments. And in that gaze, Seren saw not a king or an alpha, but a man who was terrified of dying. A man who had promised not to expose her. A man whose wolf had recognized something in her that she was only beginning to understand. "Move aside." The words left her mouth before she could stop them. Every eye in the hall turned to her. Fenris rose to his feet, his expression shifting from grief to confusion. "This is no place for a maid," he growled. "Remove yourself before—" "I can save him." Seren pushed past the beta and knelt beside Kaelin's convulsing form. "But you all need to move back. Now." "Are you mad?" someone demanded. "You are a servant. What could you possibly—" "Do as she says." The command came from Kaelin himself, forced through gritted teeth, each word costing him visible effort. "Everyone, back." The wolves obeyed their alpha's final order, retreating to the edges of the hall. Only Fenris remained close, his eyes fixed on Seren with dangerous intensity. "If you harm him," he began. "I am trying to save him," Seren snapped. "Now be silent and let me work." She placed her hands on Kaelin's chest, directly over his heart. His skin was burning hot, yet his lips had gone blue. She could feel the poison crawling through his veins like living darkness, consuming everything it touched. "Close your eyes," her mother's voice whispered from memory. "Find the light within yourself. Let it flow through your hands like water through a stream." Seren closed her eyes and reached for the power she had kept hidden for so long. The warmth rushed through her instantly, fiercer than it had ever been. Golden light blazed from her palms, illuminating the entire hall, drawing gasps of shock and fear from the watching wolves. She heard someone cry out the word witch, but she could not stop now. The poison fought her. It was not merely a substance, but something almost sentient, a darkness that recoiled from her light, but then surged back with renewed fury. Seren pushed harder, pouring more of herself into the healing, feeling her own strength begin to drain. "Seren." Kaelin's hand found hers, his fingers interlacing with her own. "You do not have to—" "Be quiet," she gasped, "and stop dying." Despite everything, she heard him laugh. A weak, broken sound, but a laugh nonetheless. And then, without warning, his power rose to meet hers. It came from somewhere deep within him, a wild silver energy that tangled with her golden light, like two rivers merging into one. The sensation was overwhelming, intimate in a way that went beyond physical touch. For one breathless moment she felt everything he felt, the agony of the poison, the terror of death, and beneath it all, a fierce, desperate longing that matched her own. The poison shattered. Seren felt it break apart like ice beneath spring sunshine, dissolving into nothing as their combined power burned through Kaelin's veins. The black marks on his skin began to fade. His breathing steadied. The deathly gray pallor gave way to healthy color. When she finally pulled her hands away, she was trembling violently. The golden glow faded from her palms, leaving only exhaustion in its wake. Kaelin sat up slowly, staring at her with an expression she could not name. The hall around them was utterly silent, every wolf frozen in shock. "You saved me." His voice was hoarse but steady. "You are a healer. A true healer." Seren tried to stand, and found her legs would not support her. She would have collapsed if Kaelin had not caught her, pulling her against his chest with surprising gentleness. "You foolish, brave woman," he murmured against her hair. "Do you have any idea what you have just revealed?" "Yes." She was too tired to lie, too drained to do anything but lean into his warmth. "But I could not let you die." "Why not?" The question hung between them, heavy with meaning. Before she could answer, Fenris's voice cut through the silence. "My king." The beta's tone was careful, controlled. "Whatever just happened here, word will spread. The servants saw everything. By nightfall, every wolf in Valdrin will know that a human witch saved the Alpha King's life." Kaelin's arms tightened around Seren. "Let them talk. It is not our people I am worried about." Fenris moved closer, lowering his voice. "The Wolf's Bane order is still out there. If they learn what she can do, what she did for you, they will come for her." Kaelin finished the thought, his jaw hardening. "Then we will be ready." He rose to his feet, lifting Seren as if she weighed nothing, and turned to address the gathered wolves. "This woman saved my life. From this moment forward, she is under my personal protection. Anyone who threatens her threatens me." His silver eyes swept the hall, daring anyone to challenge him. "Is that understood?" The wolves responded with bowed heads and murmured acknowledgments, but as Kaelin carried her from the hall, Seren caught sight of a face in the crowd that made her stomach clench. Lady Cordelia stood near the entrance, her beautiful features twisted with an emotion far darker than shock. Hatred. Pure, undiluted hatred. And in that moment, Serene realized that the Wolf's Bane order might not be the most dangerous enemy she had made today. 3 days passed in a blur of whispered rumors and watchful eyes. Seren had been moved from the servants' quarters to a chamber in the castle's eastern wing, a room with silk curtains and a feather bed that felt obscenely luxurious after years of sleeping on straw. Neve had been brought to join her, wide-eyed and trembling with questions that Seren could not fully answer. "They are saying you are a witch," Neve whispered on the second night, curled beside her sister in the enormous bed. "They are saying the Alpha King has taken you as his mistress." "Neither is true." Seren stared at the canopy above them. "I am a healer, not a witch, and His Majesty has shown me nothing but proper courtesy." The second statement was technically accurate. Kaelin had visited her chamber twice since the incident in the Great Hall, but both times he had maintained a careful distance, asking after her health and her comfort with the formal politeness of a host addressing an honored guest. It was maddening. She could still feel the echo of his power tangled with hers, still remembered the desperate longing that had poured through their connection in that single breathless moment. Yet now he treated her as if they were strangers, as if nothing had passed between them at all. On the 4th morning, Seren finally left her chamber. She found the castle transformed once again, but this time the change was subtle. Servants who had once ignored her now stared openly. Warriors who had never spared her a glance now inclined their heads as she passed. And everywhere she went, she heard the whispers. The witch who saved the king, the human who touched the Alpha's power, the maid who bewitched the most powerful wolf in Valdrin. She was crossing the inner courtyard when a figure stepped into her path. Lady Cordelia looked immaculate as always, her golden hair swept into an elaborate arrangement of braids, her gown cut to display her considerable assets, but her smile held all the warmth of a winter grave. Mistress Seren. The title dripped with contempt. How delightful to see you up and about. I had heard you were recovering from your exertions. Lady Cordelia. Seren kept her voice neutral. You are too kind to inquire. Not at all. Cordelia moved closer, her perfume cloying in the morning air. I simply wanted to offer my congratulations. It is not every day that a common servant manages to sink her claws into a king. I have sunk nothing into anyone. No? Cordelia's laugh was musical and cruel. Then why has His Majesty refused to see me since your little performance in the Great Hall? Why does he spend his nights pacing outside your chamber like a lovesick fool? Seren's heart lurched. I do not know what you mean. Of course you do not. Cordelia leaned closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. Enjoy your moment, little witch. But know this. Kaelin Vornis was promised to me long before you crawled out of whatever eastern hovel spawned you. And I do not surrender what is mine. She swept away before Seren could respond, leaving only the lingering scent of roses and malice. That evening, Seren found herself wandering the castle gardens, seeking fresh air and solitude. The moon hung heavy, and gold above the mountains, casting long shadows across the sculpted hedges and stone pathways. She did not realize she was being followed until a voice spoke from the darkness behind her. You should not be out here alone. Seren spun to find Kaelin emerging from the shadows, still dressed in the formal attire he had worn to dinner. His silver eyes caught the moonlight as he approached, and she saw his wolf looking back at her, restless and hungry. Your Majesty. She dropped into a curtsy. I did not mean to cause concern. Stop. The word was soft, but firm. When we are alone, you do not need to bow to me. You do not need to call me by my title. He stopped an arm's length away, close enough to touch, but carefully maintaining the distance. After what happened between us, such formality feels wrong. Seren straightened slowly. Then what should I call you? My name. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. I believe you have used it before, when you ordered me to stop dying. Despite everything, she felt her lips twitch. You were being very dramatic about it. I was poisoned. Still. She met his eyes, emboldened by the darkness and the strange intimacy of the moment. The gasping seemed excessive. His laugh was low and genuine, and the sound of it sent warmth spreading through her chest. You are unlike anyone I have ever known, Seren. Is that a compliment? It is a fact. He took a step closer, and she saw the struggle on his face, the war between desire and duty. When I touched your power in that hall, when our energies merged, I felt things I have never felt before. I saw things. Seren inhaled sharply. What things? You. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Your past. Your pain. The mother you lost. The years spent running and hiding. His hand rose as if to touch her face, then fell back to his side. I saw the loneliness you carry like a second skin. Tears pricked at her eyes. You had no right to see that. I know. His expression was raw with guilt. The connection was not intentional. I did not mean to. What else did you see? The question escaped before she could stop it, and she watched something shift in his silver eyes. Gold flickered at the edges, his wolf rising to the surface. I saw myself. His voice had gone rough. Through your eyes, I felt what you feel when you look at me. The air between them crackled with tension. Seren knew she should step back, should maintain the careful distance that propriety demanded. Instead, she found herself swaying closer. Kaelin! A howl split the night, long and mournful and unmistakably urgent. Kaelin's head snapped toward the sound, his body going rigid. The eastern watchtower. He was already moving. Stay here. Do not leave the gardens until I return. What is happening? But he was gone, shifting mid-stride into a massive silver wolf that bounded across the courtyard and disappeared into the darkness. Seren stood alone in the moonlight, her heart racing and her skin still tingling from his nearness. She should have obeyed his command. She should have waited in the safety of the gardens. Instead, she followed. The eastern watchtower was burning when Seren arrived. Flames licked at the ancient stone, casting hellish shadows across the courtyard where wolves battled against figures in dark robes. The clash of steel and the screams of the wounded filled the air, and beneath it all, she could smell something acrid and wrong, the same poison that had nearly killed Kaelin. They came back, she realized with cold horror. The Wolf's Bane order came back, and this time they brought an army. She should run. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, to find Neve, and escape while the castle's defenders were occupied. But then she saw him, Kaelin in his wolf form, magnificent and terrible, tearing through the enemy ranks with savage efficiency. And she saw the archer on the battlements above, arrow nocked and aimed directly at the Alpha King's exposed back. No! The scream ripped from her throat as she thrust her hands forward, calling on her power without thought or hesitation. Golden light blazed from her palms, striking the archer and sending him tumbling from the wall before he could release his poisoned arrow. For a moment, silence fell over the courtyard. Every eye, human and wolf alike, turned to stare at the glowing woman standing at the edge of the battlefield. Then chaos erupted anew. "The witch!" someone screamed. "Take the witch alive! The Grand Master wants her breathing!" 3 robed figures broke from the main battle and charged toward her. Seren raised her hands to defend herself, but her power sputtered and flickered. She had given too much of herself healing Kaelin and had not yet fully recovered. Before the attackers could reach her, a massive silver wolf slammed into them from the side. Kaelin's jaws closed around the throat of one man while his claws opened another from shoulder to hip. The third turned to flee and was cut down by Fenris, who had appeared from nowhere in his own wolf form. The battle was over within minutes. The wolf's bane forces, outmatched by the wolves' superior strength and speed, were either killed or captured. But as Seren surveyed the aftermath, she realized the true cost of the attack. 7 wolves lay dead or dying, their bodies marked with the telltale black veins of the Order's poison. Seren moved among them, healing what she could, but her depleted power could only do so much. 3 of the fallen were beyond even her abilities, their souls already slipping free of their broken bodies. "You should not have come here." She looked up to find Kaelin standing over her, human once more, his naked body streaked with blood and ash. Someone handed him a cloak, which he wrapped around himself without taking his eyes from her face. "You told me to stay in the gardens," she agreed wearily. "But that archer would have killed you. And now they know what you are." His voice was tight with something that sounded like fear. "The Order has been hunting healers for centuries, Seren. They believe your kind are the key to destroying us permanently." "My kind?" "Humans with the gift of true healing." Fenris approached, a grim expression on his scarred face. "The Order's founders discovered long ago that a healer's power can either cure or enhance their poisons. They have been capturing and experimenting on healers for generations, trying to create a weapon that no wolf can survive." Seren felt dread coil in her stomach. "That is why they came here tonight. Not just to attack the castle. To take you." Kaelin's hands clenched at his sides. "The scout I killed. The one who poisoned me. He was carrying a message. The Order knew you were here. They have known since the day you arrived." "That is impossible." Seren shook her head. "I have been so careful. I never used my power where anyone could see." "Someone told them." Fenris's voice was hard. "Someone inside these walls sent word to the Order about the healer hiding in the Alpha King's household." "A traitor. There was a traitor in Thornhaven Castle." Before Seren could process this revelation, a commotion near the gates drew their attention. Warriors were dragging a captured enemy toward them, not one of the robed soldiers, but a woman in a torn nightgown, her golden hair matted with blood and dirt. Lady Cordelia. "We found her trying to escape through the servants' passage," one of the warriors reported. "She was carrying this." He held up a leather satchel. Inside, Seren could see documents bearing official seals, vials of dark liquid, and a small fortune in gold coins. "Payment." Fenris's voice was deadly quiet. "For services rendered to the Wolf's Bane Order." Cordelia's face had gone white, but her eyes blazed with defiance as she looked at Kaelin. "Everything I did for you," she spat. "That creature has bewitched you, turned you against your own kind. I was trying to save you." "By betraying our pack? By inviting our enemies into our home?" Kaelin's voice was ice and iron. "How long, Cordelia? How long have you been feeding information to the Order?" "Since she arrived." Cordelia's gaze fixed on Seren with burning hatred. "I knew what she was the moment I saw her. I could smell the wrongness on her, the magic that does not belong in our world. I wrote to the Order that very night." "You told them about my parents too, did you not?" The words left Seren's mouth before she could stop them. 12 years ago, in Eastmere, a healer and her husband burned alive in their own home. Was that your doing as well? Something flickered in Cordelia's eyes. Not guilt, satisfaction. "Your mother was a fool," she hissed. "She thought she could hide among us, thought she could breed her filthy magic into our bloodlines. When I discovered what she was planning..." Serene's power surged before she could control it. Golden light blazed from her hands, and Cordelia screamed as she was lifted off the ground, suspended in a cocoon of burning energy. "Seren!" Kaelin's voice cut through the roaring in her ears. "Seren, stop!" But she could not stop. 12 years of grief and rage poured through her, demanding vengeance for the mother she had lost, for the life that had been stolen from her. "Please." A small voice pierced the storm of her fury. "Seren, please stop." Neve. Her sister stood at the edge of the courtyard, tears streaming down her face, terror written in every line of her young body. The sight broke through Seren's rage like sunlight through clouds. She released her power, and Cordelia crumpled to the ground, unconscious but alive. Seren stared at her own trembling hands, horrified by what she had almost done. "Take her to the dungeons." Kaelin's voice seemed to come from very far away. "She will face judgment for her crimes at dawn." Then his arms were around Seren, pulling her against his chest, and she was shaking so violently she could barely stand. "What am I becoming?" she whispered. Kaelin had no answer. He simply held her tighter, his heart beating steady and strong beneath her ear, while the fires of the watchtower burned low and the stars wheeled overhead. But as the first light of dawn touched the mountains, Seren felt something else stirring inside her. Something that had nothing to do with her healing gift or her grief or her rage. Something that felt like the beginning of a change she could not stop. The change came upon her without warning. One moment Seren was standing in her chamber, watching Neve sleep peacefully in the great bed. The next, agony exploded through her body like lightning trapped beneath her skin. She collapsed to the floor, biting her lip until she tasted blood to keep from screaming. Her bones felt as if they were trying to break free of her flesh. Her muscles burned and twisted. Deep within her chest, something ancient and wild clawed for release. "No," she gasped, pressing her forehead to the cold stone floor. "Not now. Please, not now." But the pain only intensified. Seren crawled toward the door on hands and knees, desperate to get away from Neve before something terrible happened. She made it to the corridor before her strength gave out, leaving her curled in a ball of agony against the wall. That was how Kaelin found her. "Seren." He dropped to his knees beside her, his hands gentle as they turned her face toward his. "What is happening? Are you injured?" Something. She could barely force the words out through gritted teeth. Something is wrong with me. My bones. They feel like they are. Understanding dawned in his silver eyes, followed swiftly by horror. No, he breathed. That is impossible. Humans cannot. Another wave of pain cut off his words. Seren arched against the floor, a scream finally tearing free of her throat. The sound echoed through the corridor, inhuman and terrible. When the wave passed, she found herself cradled in Kaelin's arms, being carried swiftly through the castle. She caught glimpses of torchlit corridors, startled servants, and then they were descending into darkness. "Where are you taking me?" "The old den." His voice was tight with fear. "It is the safest place for what is happening to you." "What is happening to me?" He did not answer until they reached a circular chamber deep beneath the castle, its walls lined with ancient runes that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. Only then did he lay her gently on a bed of furs and meet her eyes. "You are turning," he said quietly. "Somehow, impossible as it seems, you are becoming one of us." Seren stared at him. "That cannot be. I was not bitten. I was not." "When our powers merged." Kaelin's face was pale. "When I touched your healing energy and you touched my wolf. Something must have transferred between us. Something that is now trying to complete a change your body was never meant to undergo." "Trying to complete?" Seren seized on the word. "You mean it might not work?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "Humans do not survive the turning," Kaelin finally said. "It has been tried throughout history, always with the same result. The wolf spirit is too wild, too powerful. It tears the human body apart from within. Then I am going to die." "No." The word was fierce, desperate. "There has to be a way. Your healing gift, your magic. Perhaps that is why the change has taken hold at all. Perhaps it can also help you survive." "You do not believe that." "I have to believe it." He took her hands in his, and she felt the trembling he was trying to hide. "Because the alternative is unacceptable." Seren looked into his silver eyes and saw her own fear reflected there. But beneath the fear, she saw something else, a tenderness that made her chest ache. "Why does it matter so much to you?" she whispered. "I am just a maid, a stranger you have known for barely half a year. You have never been just anything to me." Kaelin raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "From the first moment I saw you, my wolf knew. I fought it, denied it, and told myself it was impossible. But the truth," his voice broke, "the truth is that you are my mate, Seren. My fated one. The other half of my soul that I never believed I would find." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Kaelin. That is why the change is happening." His forehead pressed against hers. "Our powers did not merge by accident. The bond between us called them together. My wolf has been trying to claim you since the moment we met. And now?" He squeezed his eyes shut. "Now that claiming is trying to complete itself. Even though it may kill you." The pain was building again, pressure mounting beneath her skin. Seren gripped his hands tighter. "Is there truly no way to survive this?" "There is one possibility." The voice came from the doorway. Moira, Kaelin's grandmother and the pack's eldest healer, stood there with ancient eyes that had seen centuries of joy and sorrow. "But it requires a choice that cannot be unmade." "Tell me." Seren forced herself to sit up despite the agony. "Whatever it is, tell me." Moira entered the chamber slowly, her weathered hands clutching a leather pouch that smelled of strange herbs. "The turning fails because the human body rejects the wolf spirit. It fights the change instead of accepting it." She knelt beside Seren, studying her with knowing eyes. "But you are not merely human, child. You carry the blood of the old healers, those who walked between the worlds of man and beast long before history began." "What does that mean?" It means the wolf spirit within you is not a foreign invader. It is an awakening of something that has always been there, sleeping in your blood, waiting for the right catalyst. Moira's gaze shifted to Kaelin. Your mate's power was that catalyst. His wolf called to the wolf that has slumbered in her lineage for generations. Hope flickered in Kaelin's eyes. Then she can survive the change? Perhaps. Moira held up a hand. But only if she chooses it. The old magic requires consent. If she fights the turning, if she clings to her human self, the wolf will destroy her. But if she surrenders willingly, if she embraces what she is becoming, then she will live, then she will have a chance. Moira turned back to Seren. You must understand, child, this is not merely a physical transformation. You will become something new, something that is neither fully human nor fully wolf. You will gain strength and speed and senses beyond imagining, but you will also be bound to this pack, to this king, for the rest of your very long life. Seren looked at Kaelin, saw the desperate hope warring with the determination to let her choose freely. And if I refuse? She asked quietly. If I choose to remain human? Moira's expression was gentle but unflinching. Then the change will continue regardless, and your body will tear itself apart before sunrise. There is no going back, child. The only path is forward. Another wave of pain crashed through her, and Seren cried out, clutching at Kaelin's hands. Through the haze of agony, she heard Neve's voice from the doorway. Seren. Her sister ran to her side, tears streaming down her young face. Please do not leave me. Please do not die. Seren looked at her sister, at the Alpha King who claimed she was his mate, at the ancient healer who offered her an impossible choice. Die as a human, or live as something else entirely. When she closed her eyes, she felt the wolf stirring inside her, not a foreign presence, but something that had always been there, waiting. And in that moment of recognition, she realized Moira was right. This was not an ending. It was a beginning. Tell me what I have to do, she whispered. The ritual began at moonrise. Moira had prepared the chamber with salt circles and burning herbs, filling the air with smoke that made Serene's heightened senses swim. Candles flickered in alcoves carved into the ancient stone, casting dancing shadows across the runes that pulsed with silver light. You must remove your clothing, Moira instructed. The change will destroy anything you wear, and we cannot risk the fabric binding you during the transformation. Seren's cheeks flushed, but she nodded. Kaelin turned his back without being asked, giving her privacy as she shed her dress and wrapped herself in a thin linen shift that Moira provided. This will not survive either, the old healer admitted, but it will preserve your modesty until the final moments. Neve had been sent away despite her protests, placed under Fenris's protection in the upper castle. Seren was grateful. Whatever happened next, she did not want her sister to witness it. Lie in the center of the circle, Moira directed. And whatever happens, do not break the salt line. The boundary will contain your wolf during the first transformation, prevent her from running wild before you learn to control her. Seren lowered herself onto the cold stone floor, feeling the ancient power thrumming beneath her spine. Above her, the chamber's domed ceiling was open to the sky, revealing a perfect circle of stars and the heavy golden moon. Kaelin. Moira's voice was gentle but firm. You must shift now. Your wolf needs to be present to guide hers through the change. Seren turned her head to watch as the Alpha King shed his own clothing without hesitation. In the candlelight, his body was a masterwork of muscle and scar tissue, evidence of countless battles survived. Then silver light rippled across his skin, and where a man had stood, a massive wolf now waited. He was beautiful. Even through her fear, Seren could acknowledge that. His fur was the color of moonlight on snow, his eyes molten gold that fixed on her with fierce intensity. Now. Moira began to chant in a language older than any Seren had ever heard. Stop fighting. Let the wolf come. For a moment nothing happened. Then the pain returned, worse than before, and Seren arched off the stone floor with a scream that echoed off the ancient walls. Her bones were breaking. She could hear them snapping, feel them reforming into shapes that should have been impossible. Her skin burned as if she had been plunged into fire. Every nerve in her body screamed in protest against the violation of natural law. "Surrender!" Moira's voice cut through the agony. "You must surrender, child. Fighting will only make it worse." But how could she surrender to this? How could she willingly embrace the destruction of everything she had been? Through the haze of pain, she heard a whine. The silver wolf had moved to the edge of the salt circle, as close as he could get without breaking the barrier. His golden eyes were fixed on her face, and in them she saw her own anguish reflected. He was feeling this. Their bond, incomplete as it was, meant that her pain was his pain. "I am sorry," she gasped. "Kaelin, I am sorry." He shifted. One moment wolf, the next man, kneeling naked at the circle's edge with tears streaming down his face. "Do not apologize." His voice was ragged. "Just hold on, please, Seren. Hold on for me." Another wave of transformation agony crashed through her, and this time she felt something else beneath it. The wolf. Her wolf. A presence that had been sleeping inside her all along, now fighting to break free. She was not being invaded. She was being awakened. The realization changed everything. Instead of fighting the pain, Seren let herself sink into it. Instead of clinging to her human form, she released her grip and let the wolf rise. The shift in perspective was immediate and profound. What had felt like destruction now felt like liberation. "Yes," Moira breathed. "Yes, child." Just like that. The transformation accelerated. Seren felt her spine elongate, her limbs reshape, her senses explode into dimensions she had never imagined. She could smell the herbs burning in the braziers, each one distinct and identifiable. She could hear Kaelin's heartbeat racing, could taste his fear and hope on the back of her tongue. And then, between one breath and the next, it was over. Seren opened eyes that saw the world in shades she had no names for. She lifted her head on a neck that bent in new directions. She looked down at paws where hands had been, at fur the color of fresh cream touched with gold. She was Wolf. A sob escaped Kaelin's throat. "You survived. Blessed moon. You survived." Seren tried to respond and produced a sound that was half whine, half bark. The noise startled her so badly that she scrambled backward, legs tangling beneath her unfamiliar body. "Easy." Kaelin shifted back into his wolf form and stepped carefully over the salt line, which Moira had broken with a sweep of her foot. "Easy, my love. It takes time to learn your new shape." His voice was in her head. Not sounds, but pure meaning. Wolf speaking to wolf in a language that required no words. "How do I change back?" she asked, surprised when the thought transmitted as clearly as speech. "You will learn, but first—" He moved closer, his silver fur brushing against her golden coat. "First, we must complete the bond." Seren felt her wolf stir at his nearness, felt instincts she did not fully understand urging her toward him. "What do I do?" "Trust me." He circled her slowly, his muzzle brushing along her flank, her shoulder, her neck. "Trust your wolf. She knows what comes next." And she did know. The knowledge rose from somewhere deep and primal, older than thought, older than language. Seren turned her head, exposing the vulnerable curve of her throat in the ancient gesture of submission and trust. Kaelin's wolf made a sound that was almost a moan. "Are you certain? Once this is done, there is no undoing it. We will be bound until death and beyond." "I am certain." His teeth found the place where her neck met her shoulder. The bite was sharp and sudden, flooding her with pain that transformed instantly into pleasure, so intense she nearly collapsed. Power roared through the connection between them, his wolf and hers, his soul and hers, merging into something greater than either could be alone. She saw his memories, his childhood in this castle, the weight of kingship thrust upon him too young, the centuries of loneliness that had preceded her arrival. She felt his love for her, fierce and absolute, a fire that had been burning since the first moment he caught her scent. And she knew he was seeing her just as clearly. Every secret, every fear, and every hope she had ever harbored, all of it laid bare before him. My mate. His voice in her mind was thick with emotion. My heart. My home. When he released her throat, Seren felt the bond settle into place like a key turning in a lock. She was no longer alone. She would never be alone again. Now you, Kaelin said, tilting his own head back. Claim me as I have claimed you. Serene's wolf needed no further invitation. She lunged forward, her new fangs finding his throat with instinctive precision. The moment she bit down, the bond flared into its full strength, and she heard him howl with joy as their souls fused permanently together. When it was over, they lay tangled together on the chamber floor, panting and trembling with the aftermath of transformation and bonding. Moira had slipped away at some point, leaving them alone beneath the watching stars. I love you. The words emerged in her mind without conscious thought. I think I have loved you since that first night, when you demanded to know where I had been. Kaelin's wolf made a sound that might have been laughter. I was terrified that night, terrified of what I felt, of what I might do if anyone had harmed you. You were insufferably arrogant. I was desperately in love with a woman I thought I could never have. He nuzzled against her neck, tongue lapping gently at the mark he had left. And now you are mine. Forever. Forever, she agreed, the words settling into her heart like a promise. They stayed in the chamber until dawn broke over the mountains, learning each other's new shapes, testing the boundaries of their bond. When they finally emerged into the morning light, hand in hand and human once more, the entire pack was waiting. Seren paused at the sight of hundreds of wolves and their human forms assembled in the great courtyard. Fenris stood at the front, Neve beside him, both watching with expressions she could not read. What is happening? She whispered to Kaelin. They have come to meet their queen. He squeezed her hand. If you will have them. Queen. The word should have terrified her. A week ago, she had been a maid scrubbing floors and hiding her gifts from a world that wanted her dead. Now she was being asked to rule beside the most powerful alpha in the 5 kingdoms. But when she looked at the assembled pack, at the warriors who had fought to defend her, at the healers who had guided her transformation, at her sister standing among them with tears of joy on her young face, she did not feel fear. She felt home. I will have them, she said, loud enough for all to hear. I will have all of you, if you will have me. The howl that rose from the pack shook the very stones of Thornhaven Castle. One by one, the wolves dropped to their knees, acknowledging their new queen with the ancient gesture of fealty. Neve broke from the crowd and threw herself into Seren's arms. You did it, she sobbed. You survived. I was so scared. But you did it. I did. Seren held her sister tight, breathing in her familiar scent now overlaid with the rich complexity her new senses provided. And we are safe now, truly safe, for the first time in our lives. Kaelin's arm wrapped around them both, pulling them close. Welcome to your pack, he murmured against Serene's hair. Welcome to your family. Above them, the morning sun climbed higher, burning away the last shadows of the night, and Seren, former maid and hidden healer, now wolf and queen and mate, lifted her face to its warmth and smiled. She had spent her whole life running from what she was. Now, at last, she had found where she belonged.